So, welcome. It's great to have you all here. I haven't done a great deal of floor talks, but I'm very, very proud to be doing one for you guys with regard to this particular show, which is called The American Experiments. So, just I'm going to give you a bit of a preamble as to how this show has come about and why it's come about, this exhibition, and talk to you about different sort of methodologies and choices that were made in the sort of process as to, aesthetic decisions, content decisions, and, also what got placed where and why. So I personally have a filmmaking background. I studied art history, and then was a curator in Sydney at the Australian Centre of Photography, and then studied a BCA in documentary film. And I've always had that combination of moving image and visual arts. I then went to work at Acme as a curator in the startup. So that was when it used to be City Media, and then I was part of the sort of task force that then moved into the Acme, as we know today, Best Square. And there was a small sort of team that worked there. So I've always had one very firm foot planted in the kind of art history, visual arts background, and my other foot planted very firmly in a filmmaking, moving image kind of context. And those two have always had an interplay, almost like a double helix, and it kind of makes the DNA of my decisions, if you will. So fast forward to today, and now I'm the director of Gertrude Contemporary. And again, you see that interplay of those various sort of influences through the work that I do here and the people that I work with. And I presume you, as all kind of budding practitioners, you will find that you will constantly be kind of exploring similar themes and kind of notions of your work. And when you kind of look over it, not unlike the film which we'll get to, you will see that there's always the same things that you keep coming back to that are core to the sort of elements of creative endeavour that you want to explore. So that's the background. The other thing, having worked recently in the US, I was working in Washington at the Australian Embassy as the director of programs there, and so I had quite an interesting insight into the cultural sector within the US and also within Europe. And as many of you, probably been to biennales and different exhibitions, in your time at uni, just generally online, whatever, the sort of the boundaries or the sort of walls between different disciplines are starting to crumble. Like all of you will be very adept in working in photography, digital media, some of you might be in sculpture, in 2D, in painting, but these disciplines are increasingly dissolving. So you look at the sort of distribution networks or structures that traditionally cinema came through are very much changing. You look at your free-to-air television and your on-demand and your iView and all of these this kind of traditional, again, siloed structures delivering media are changing. And it's the job of institutions such as Gertrude, such as ACCA, the NGV, to be kind of at the forefront of actually advocating and providing a context for the sort of dissolving of these disciplines. And one way that we're exploring doing that is to get what is in the kind of scheme of things a traditional filmmaker, so somebody who operates within that cinematic context. So he goes to Screen Australia and other funding bodies, gets money to make a film, and then it gets screened on television or in the cinema. So that's a very specific structure. It's different to the visual arts where you would go to the gallery and you put in a proposal and you get an exhibition. But what has always intrigued me, particularly being very firmly in those two camps, is that artists are frustrated by being placed in those very sort of rigid structures by which they have to deliver their work, be them dancers, photographers, there's this delicious sort of interplay. So in the case of Emile Porter-Wilson, who is probably in contemporary parlance one of Australia's most accomplished documentary filmmakers, certainly of his generation. So one of the first projects that he did, and again came onto my radar, was in 2001, and he had an aunt, and we always look, to the stories that are closest to us. That's what a good practitioner would do, is to, look at what is closest to you and use that as your sort of vehicle to explore other ideas. So Emile did a film called Chasing Buddha. He has a very feisty aunt who was this kind of very scary lesbian separatist, and then she decided that she would chill out a bit, and she sort of became a Buddhist monk. And what she, in that process, one of the things that she did was to travel to the US, and she would work with death row inmates who were interested in various kind of tenets of religion, and she would have exchanges with them. Emile followed her in that process, and the film was called Chasing Buddha, and it's quite literally chasing his aunt, chasing the questions, chasing of religion and what have you. And he was this little punk kind of filmmaker who just had tenacity and a credit card, and kind of went and followed that story. And that was his first, I guess, sort of introduction and what has become a fascination and a love affair with America. So that's where it began. So the composition of this exhibition is fragments. He calls them sort of enlarged or extended fragments of his various sort of forays into the US. And this is not an uncommon sort of phenomenon. There's people like Mike Carr or Vin Vendors, who have come from another culture and another sort of context, and then looking at America or a foreign country with the prism of the experience that they had as an outsider. And Emile very much sits in that context. So two things going on here. Gertrude's job to kind of be, I guess, at the forefront of a kind of more advanced discipline discussion. So take a film and put them in a gallery context. What happens? What happens? How does that alter the reading? How does that alter the work, the actual viewing process? That compared to seeing a cinema, which is a very traditional sort of structure. So when I first started, one of the shows that I wanted to do was to explore very much that. So you look at, as I mentioned, biennales and all over the world. The most recent one in Venice, Auckland, he would just get straight documentary. So 52 minutes, narrative structure, and he just plonked it, in a kind of a special screening room. And these were dotted all the way throughout the Arsenal. He also did that in the documenter. So there's this tradition of curators who are interested in, what moving images is saying and doing, and it helps them kind of formulate the sort of curatorial argument that they're proposing. And this is not uncommon. And you've also, you guys in your studies would have come across practitioners such as Man Ray, Monthollinage, Chantal Ackman, who else is really interesting one? Any range of different practitioners who are weaving in and out of different disciplines. So they have a concept and an idea, and they choose the discipline with which they want to execute it. So, getting to the expanded fragments, I have a love affair with documentary. I don't see myself as a curator. That's not what my kind of path is. I see myself very much as a creative director. So this exhibition began with discussions where I just sat down with Emile. This is what I'm interested in. I look at filmmakers such as Steve McQueen and
Douglas Gordon and his French partner, Perrino.
Thank you. So these traditionally artists who have moved into a kind of filmic context. And I'm very much interested in the reverse of that also. So that's where this exhibition has come into play. Again, of that semi-permeable membrane between disciplines is something that I'm extremely interested in, or Gertrude is extremely interested in. I presume you guys are. So, Emile, Tracing Water was his first kind of, I guess, interplay with another field of the US. So we sat down, we had conversations. He was proposing to do a sort of an installation based on some sort of research he was doing in Oklahoma on a very, very nasty murder case. And the name has, because it's so nasty, kind of expunged from my brain. And he wanted to explore that in almost like a sort of fictionalized, but still in the kind of documentary guise. And so we talked about the logistics behind that, and also the ethics behind that particular gruesome tale of generally it was a man who had murdered a young girl. It was a truly heinous crime. And he was interested in exploring the who, the why, and the what. How did this happen? Why has this happened? And you know, this was all, he was the kind of murderer who's now on death row, blogged about it and did the whole kind of social media interplay about this particularly gruesome crime. So that was the origins of the discussion. And he was shooting a feature at the time in the US, in Oklahoma. And we wanted to sort of expand that notion, and I've always been interested in the various projects that he's done over the years, over 17 years. So there's more this discussion about, rather than trying to, fit the round peg of a feature concept and idea into the square hole of a gallery, why don't we explore other sort of kind of notions around content and material that you have? Why don't we try and kind of cultivate an experience where you walk through different sort of encounters that as Emile the filmmaker has in the US. And in essence, that's kind of what we try to do. It's a portrait of the US, it's a portrait of Emile, the artist and filmmaker, and also, I guess, a sort of a portrait of, a crude art practice, which is, pretty much where Emile sits with his work. So, in this room, we've got a few things going on. We've got this grid of photographic work. Again, these are research pictures that Emile took in a place called Modesto in California. And Modesto in California is an interesting place. I don't know if many of you travel the west coast of California at all. There's a couple of places where there's a large influx of parole, prisoners on parole kind of released into Modesto